Hey folks, welcome to another video. I'm in the garden on this warm November day. We just got out of a really intense cold snap of multiple nights in the low 20s at the end of October, early November here. And just wanted to walk around a little bit and show you what's in the ground and how we're putting some of the beds to rest for the winter. So we're trialing multiple methods for putting beds to rest for the winter and gonna see, how it results in the spring when we come into planting, and really use this as a year to determine some of the methods we want to use and stick to moving forward. It also depends a bit on what the conditions of the bed are. In some of the more poorly draining beds, we've done cover crop, whereas in other areas we are putting down mulch or tarping. So I'll show you that. So this block of 10 beds is almost entirely put to rest. We've got some really nice remains coming up in here and some spring mix that really weathered those cold nights quite well. And then we've got multiple different methods for covering up. Here is where we had our peppers all summer. So we cut them out and put about 1 inch of compost down. We're just gonna keep this tarped until we're ready to plant in the spring. A couple of these beds and in other places around the farm, we put down straw. And my hope is that it's gonna break down considerably by March. So much so that we can put a layer of compost on top and direct seed or transplant into that. In the case that we get to that point and it's not broken down enough, we can just move it, rake it into the paths, and in the beds that we've done this, we can just use the straw as mulch in the adjacent paths rather than wood chips. But I'm curious to see how it breaks down and if we can integrate this carbon through slow decomposition in the winter. These beds here had the worst drainage all summer, and we had the most issues in these beds of anywhere else in the gardens. So we sowed a nice stand of crimson clover that has mostly come up quite well. One of the good benefits of crimson clover is ease of termination when you're ready to incorporate it or plant into it or whatever it may be. But we'll tarp this about a month out from planting, thick layer of compost, and then again, hopefully that will be ready for planting. But haven't done much experimenting with this thus far on any kind of commercial scale. So a lot of this is just a learning process and seeing what works the best, and not relying just on one method, but rather trying out several and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and maybe what we like better than others moving forward. Here's a bed of arugula that we got a couple nice cuttings off of. It got knocked back pretty well by the cold nights, but I see it now as acting as its own cover crop that I'm also just leaving in the ground and not mulching and not tarping, because I'm curious to see if we get any warm spells in the winter, if it may bounce back. I've seen that happen in the past with arugula and spinach in particular, where it looks totally knocked out from a cold night, and then in western North Carolina we get these nice warm spells in December and January sometimes, and I've seen it come back really nicely. So that's what the field gardens are looking like, and a lot of the beds are put to rest in these different methods, but we've also got a good amount of crops in the ground still that are doing really well. The green kale, the winter boar variety, withstood the frost beautifully. We planted a bit of this red boar, and you can see the crimson clover that I undersowed in here is flourishing, but it did not take the cold nearly as well. It was planted at the same time, and a lot of these plants are not going to recover. So interesting to see. We've got some red Russian in the greenhouse that was planted on accident, but it's interesting to see how much better it withstood the cold, because the purple, even in the tunnels, has not done well in the cold compared to the other kales. Got some Salanova and more head lettuces, romaines, red leaf, collard greens doing well. You can see we've got multiple different mechanisms for covering our rows. We were gifted a lot of these wire covers, and I've been experimenting with making the EMT hoops. I bought a hoop bender from Johnny's and I like it a lot. I think that it's got particularly nice application for taller crops, and one of the benefits is, while each hoop is more expensive, it covers 2 beds, and you only need 4 or 5 for a 50-foot bed to get a nice tight cover with the remay. Turnips, more lettuces, kale, this beautiful purple daikon, more collard greens, and yeah, for how cold it got, everything's looking really nice in here. New farm cat fitting in nicely. She's just a little snuggle bunch. Somewhat to my surprise, the lettuces in the tunnels held up better than some of the brassicas. We had more damage on the kales than anything else, and we didn't cover in here, and perhaps we should have, but yeah, it's interesting to see what has done well and what hasn't in those cold nights in the tunnel. So again, you can see the purple kale in here that I left is the remaining stuff. I've clipped out a good bit, but this red Russian that must have just been in the seed pack and we planted when we transplanted is just showing no sign of damage at all. So it's one of those little things you kind of learn on accident, and next year's crop plan now doesn't include this red boar. It's been pretty low yielding. It's pretty and it attracts customers to the market booth, and you know, people like buying it, but it's not the best kale. So we're gonna stick with red Russian, and the winter boar in here held on okay. There's definitely some tip damage, but where the purple plants that didn't take it well pretty much just melted. These winter boars are going to recover really well. Got bok choys planted out and beautiful, nice cabbages that definitely got real cold and froze and thawed out, and you know, at times didn't look the best, but they have really bounced back nicely and heading up beautifully. So we'll get these out of here in the next couple weeks. Got a couple successions of red leaf in here. This Cherokee variety is just my favorite red leaf. It's heat tolerant, cold tolerant, gets nice and big, it's hardy, and yeah, the lettuces are definitely thriving in here. After we had that really intense rain event right after we planted out this first round of lettuce, it affected the growth rates on the plants we had just planted because some places stayed saturated longer. So we've been just like successionally pulling out romaines and filling in the empty spots with more lettuce, double cropping it. Similar thing in this bed and in this bed with the red leaf. So I think that with day length continuing to shorten and shorten, the plants that we pop in the rest of the space after we harvest out the bigger stuff will catch up to these little guys that are already in the ground. So that's it, just a quick video giving a winter preparation garden tour, talking about how things withstood this cold snap we had. It's been really warm and nice, but more cold is coming up, and we feel good about moving forward through the winter and just continuing this learning process in our first year really growing winter vegetables. So thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you next time. Before getting into